This is our pre-4th of July edition, and we have a show for you today that very much aligns with our democracy, its origins, its sustenance, and its future. So I know you're going to enjoy what you're about to hear. Our featured BBB Wise Giving Alliance accredited charity seal holders for this episode are TSC Alliance, United American Patriots, VFW National Home, Wisconsin Waterfowl Association. To find out more about these and other BBB Wise Giving Alliance accredited charity seal holders, go to give.org.
You're listening to the Heart of Giving podcast with Art Taylor, powered by bbbgive.org. Here we explore the motivations that form the basis of giving and service. We inspire generosity and celebrate the transformative effects that giving and service have on the human spirit and on community. The conversations featured on the podcast also uncover giving strategies that educate and provide tools to help listeners make impactful gifts of both their time and money. We hope you enjoy this episode.
This is the Heart of Giving podcast, powered by bbbgive.org. Give.org is the nation's standards-based charity evaluator, and it's your one-stop source for information on giving and reports on the most asked about charities. I'm Art Taylor. So if you've been listening to this podcast over the, I don't know how many episodes, we're closing in on 200. You know that civic engagement is a really important thing to me. I believe that in order for our country to thrive and prosper, people have to be engaged in what's going on. And one way we do that, of course, is to vote. Another way we do it is by knowing the issues that are important to us. Another way is to be able to align and connect with others in your community and even work together across differences when they exist so that we can solve problems. Government only works when we do these things. And I don't know, I just had this sense that for some times, the country has been heading maybe in the wrong direction when it comes to civic engagement. Yes, people are speaking out more than they used to. But in many cases, I have to ask, to what end? Are they speaking with knowledge of the issues that they're really talking about? Are they having a full understanding of what they are giving up when they advocate for a certain thing? Are they willing to consider the positions of those who they feel are antagonizing them or against them? I don't know the answer to that, but I have this sense that things are different today than they were. And maybe part of the reason for that is we're not doing a good enough job, at least those in my generation, to share the importance of that. Well, my guest today is doing a lot more of that. And this is why we have her on today to talk about the work going on at Coro, Southern California. And my guest is Natalie Samarjian, who's the president and CEO of Coro of Southern California. And the mission of that organization is to strengthen the democratic process by preparing individuals for effective and ethical leadership. And under Natalie's leadership, the organization has developed a new strategic plan, expanded its programs and partnerships, developed new revenues, and cultivated a growing community of alumni who are transforming communities across the country. So we want to hear about this. And Natalie, I just want to welcome you to the Heart of Giving podcast to share that work with us.
Hello, Art. Thank you so much for that introduction. Thank you for having me. And thank you for holding space for such dynamic and important conversations with the Heart of Giving podcast. It's such a pleasure and honor to be here with you today.
Well, Natalie, it is a pleasure. It's an honor to have these conversations with distinguished people like you. And when I have them, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, who are you? Where did you come from? How did you get here? What was it about your upbringing that led you to hold this space, as you say, right now, helping us be better citizens, frankly?
So, my story is quite an American one. And I say that to say that it is unique, like every American story is unique. I am an immigrant. I immigrated to the US from the Middle East, from Beirut, Lebanon, at a very young age. I was 5 years old, and my mother and I escaped civil war and all that comes with civil war, poverty, and hopelessness. And we arrived in the US, in Los Angeles specifically, in New Year's Eve of 1989 with the promise of new beginning, just to pursue the immigrant dream. And I was undocumented until my mid-teens. And the first sort of decade of our journey was really defined by the new immigrant journey. And at a very young age, navigating immigrant life with a single mother, navigating life as an undocumented Angelino, really, I think, opened my eyes to the role of policy, to the role of government, and how that impacts everyday folks who are traversing their own individual journeys and relationships with government and policy. So that was a very early activation based on my experience. I then had the honor of going to UCLA. I'm a very proud Bruin. And I minored in public affairs and really deepened the exploration. I majored in sociology and was really intrigued and fascinated by the sort of social, economic, and political dynamics that shape life for folks living in the US. And I had a professor who is a Professor Dukakis. Some of you all may know. He was a former presidential candidate who shared with me, said, I think you'd be really interested in this Coro fellowship. And I trusted him. I went through the interview process and went up to San Francisco to pursue the Coro Fellows program in public affairs. And it was a year that really expanded my learning experientially in a way that nothing had done previously, and frankly, nothing has done since. I fell in love with the program. I fell in love with the mission of the organization. I went on to, pursue work in other areas. I've pursued work as a human capital consultant. I went on to law school, pursued law as a public interest attorney. But Coro really remained a formative part of my personal and professional journey. And about 8 years ago, post 2016 election, I feel comfortable defining it as the election because I think it has been the election for so many of us. When our sort of hyperpartisanship and fragmentation and a fracturing of civil discourse had reached an all-time high, it felt so critical to advance Coro's work, which I hope to share more about soon. And I was asked to explore stepping into the CEO role to really expand the organization. And I haven't looked back. It's been such an honor to be able to lead this work at a time where it's felt more critical, more necessary than ever before. And we've grown tremendously. And I think that's a testament to the on-the-ground need for folks to feel connected to one another, to feel connected to democracy building, and to really feel like they have agency in building the future of our communities and in our nation.
Wow, that's quite a background, but I will say more common than we think in American culture, right? More common than we think in American culture. All of us are in some ways immigrants, if not because of our own personal journey is certainly because of ancestors.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, we're all, I guess, sometimes amazed by what can happen in a matter of a generation or two. And your story is quite inspiring, that you came here and then began to think about over time how you could give back in a way that reflected your values and your personal experiences. So, really impressed by that. So, given your background, what do you see that are sort of common links maybe to your upbringing and that experience and the work you're doing today at Coro?
I mean, I'd love to start by sharing kind of a little bit more about the work that we're doing here at Coro, and thank you for the beautiful opening art. Our work here is really centered on investing in training and activating a diverse and dynamic community of civic leaders, instilling them with the skills, the knowledge of sort of local public challenges, and then the community, the networks to effectuate meaningful change in their communities, in their organizations, and across our region. And we do that by designing and delivering a portfolio of cohort-based programs. And it's really grounded in bringing together leaders who have a diversity of experiences, who work in diverse industries and sectors, who represent the different corners of Los Angeles and beyond, and bringing them together so that they not only learn the skills and the frameworks that we provide at Coro, but also to learn from each other. That is where we find the richest learning lives. We also pair that with the skill building and framework expansion that's rooted in adaptive leadership. We believe deeply that problems are adaptive and they require fixes that are beyond technical. They require us to think holistically and sustainably about addressing any one of our public challenges, be it housing and houselessness, or public health, or disparities in education and access. That really is the mission, the core mission and vision that we are hoping to advance. And part of that work really rests on making sure that we're holding space for leaders to come in with a diversity of perspectives and a diversity of ideologies that you shared earlier. The fracturing of our sort of civil dialogue. And we believe that it's important for any one of us to expand what we call our wedge of awareness, to make sure that we are welcoming perspectives that we may not necessarily sort of have access to in our everyday lives, or may even subconsciously block in our everyday lives. But that's the kind of mind and heart expanding conversation that we believe it's important to hold space for. And it's, there's no doubt that I've been drawn to this work based on my background. I've seen the devastation that hyper partisanship and focusing on our divides causes. I am unfortunately a child who was born into war. That is the unfortunate and devastating result of not reaching across lines of difference, because that is the absolute worst place that it could get to, but it can, and we've seen it historically, and we have opportunities to prevent that, to focus on overlaps, to focus on commonality, to honor difference, and to make sure, by the way, that when we are holding space for a diversity of perspectives, that we are being mindful in those spaces to not be harmful to folks who may come with marginalized identities and experiences, right? We want to honor that. We want to honor that folks are coming with their own traumas and their own experiences. And we want to make sure that we're mindful in the way that we hold space, but it can absolutely be done. It is hard work, but I can't think of more work that is more important in this moment or for the future of our world, frankly. I think we have to think beyond our nation in this moment. It is critical for the future of our world.
Well, I won't be the first one to say this, but a lot of people would argue that there are powerful forces at play that keep us in tribes or keep us separated or help us to believe that one person is very different than another person and you can't agree with them on anything. Powerful forces. How do we overcome those forces? What are you saying to young people who you encounter that gets us past that?
I think the most critical element is to just continue to expand our own critical thinking and build frameworks to engage in consistent inquiry ourselves, right? That is the core of leadership. It is centered on curiosity. It's asking effective and thoughtful questions, right? Because we know what we know, and we can sort of expand the other areas. What others may know that we don't know, what others don't know and we don't know. And the only way that we can expand those gaps for ourselves is to engage in curiosity, is to ask questions, is to tap into curiosity in areas that we don't have consistent access to. It may be reaching beyond the paper that we read every day and tapping into new sources of media. It is maybe speaking to folks that we are not conversing with every day. But I think the source of making sure that we are aware of all of the powers at play that impact our lives is to build the tools to consistently gauge those, to evaluate those, to analyze those, and to seek new information to expand areas that we may have blind spots to.
And now it's time for our Giving Tips segment with Bennett Weiner, one of the world's most renowned experts on charity accountability and the COO of the BBB Wise Giving Alliance.
During the summer months, a number of you are probably going to hear about various charity benefit concerts and having the opportunity to buy tickets to see a favorite act or artist, and also know that your purchase is going to help some specified cause. So if you decide to participate along those lines, let me suggest the following things. First, find out about the benefiting charity. Visit their websites to learn about their programs and how funds are going to be used. Make sure it's a cause that you really want to support. Also, I would say be wary of ticket scalpers. They may have inflated prices from scalpers, and even if you pay them, it doesn't mean that more money is going to go to the charity. Only the purchase from authorized sellers is going to have a portion of it going to the charitable organization. The other thing is the organization should tell you the actual anticipated amount of the purchase that's going to help the charity, because without that, you're not going to know how much is actually helping them. So look for that disclosure. Also, when you're at the event, merchandise sales like T-shirts or other gift items that may be selling with the Axe logo on it or what have you, don't assume that any of that money is going to go to the specified charity unless they specifically indicate that. And the other important thing is, for concert tickets that are sold at face value, the purchase price is generally not deductible as a charitable gift for federal income tax purposes. Usually only the amount that is deemed a donation can be deducted, and that's the amount above the value of what you receive. But since these tickets are pretty much selling at their market value, none of it is likely going to be deductible, even though you know that you are going to be helping a good cause or an organization that you really want to support. And even if you are reluctant to attend the concert for whatever reason, remember you can always consider donating directly to the charity through its website and help them that way. Of course, we always recommend that no matter what benefit concert you decide to attend to that helps a charity, find out if the charity meets the BBB charity standards by visiting give.org.
So how does Coro support people who are trying to build those tools, those frameworks of thinking?
Well, we do exactly that, Art. Is we begin by skill building and framework activation. So inquiry is a critical framework that lives in and across all our programs that we see as a pivotal element to effective and thoughtful leadership. So sort of in an introduction to all our programs, we build within our cohorts new tools to ask effective questions, to lean in with curiosity, to screen for our own biases and how they impact our decisions. And so we have a series of tools and frameworks that support leaders to do just that, because we are all consistently informed and impacted by our own biases. And we often are not aware of how those biases are guiding our own decisions, guiding the information we seek and the information that we don't seek. So that is actually a bedrock of all of our programs. And then we go beyond that. We build skills for leaders to think adaptively. I think the last 4 years have taught us that we need to be prepared for the things we know are coming and all the things we have no idea are coming our way, right? And so in the aftermath of the pandemic, we have heard from leaders that our adaptive leadership toolbox that supports them to meet challenges with resolve, with resilience, with agility is more critical than ever. We want to make sure that leaders have those skill sets to meet the moment, to navigate challenges, and within them to seek and tap into the opportunities.
Well, every once in a while when I do this podcast, I ask a hard question. And I'm going to ask you a hard question.
Uh-oh.
Get ready. So we have people in our society, and I'm not going to pick sides because they're on both sides, or all sides, I guess, who we just feel like you can't talk to that person. They're so locked into the way they see things that it's not really worth having a conversation with them. What do you say about that?
I say, how's that working out for us? How's that working out for us? Because it's not. Because it's not. Really, I think a lot of folks think about that in this macro party line lens, right? We think far right, far left, but it is much more expansive and nuanced than that, right? We have a diversity of perspectives that live in some of our micro issues and public challenges. We have a diversity of perspectives on the future of transportation, on housing and houselessness and housing density. If we don't bring in a diversity of perspectives into each of these conversations, if we don't within us build our own political will to make sure that we have a table that is large and wide, that has many seats on it, and a table that has the ground rules of listening. And I mean, really listening, not listening so that we respond, but listening to learn, then these challenges are not going to be addressed, because staying in our corner, staying in our silos, and only surrounding ourselves with folks who share our opinions and perspective and points of view is not going to move the needle on any one of these challenges. That's just the reality. So I guess my response is it's not working out. So I think we just got to try something different.
Do you feel that we lack the skills to do that? Because I kind of do. I feel like so often we want to wish that we could get people to have these conversations, but families can't even have it. I mean, they're families who report on Thanksgiving, I don't know if I'm going because so-and-so's coming, and every time we get together, it's an argument, and I don't want to ruin my Thanksgiving. How do we get to a place where more people can be skilled? Because it's a skill, I think. It's probably a disposition and an orientation too. But how do we get more people in a place where they can have these conversations and it not end in hate or disenfranchisement?
You're exactly right, Art. I think it is both a skill and a disposition and an orientation, but I think we can skill build to activate the disposition to lean into our own openness and our own willingness to listen with curiosity. I think we often think about the skills required to have cross-difference dialogue in a really technical sense, right? It's sit at a table, share your perspective, stop, have the other. And these are just technical solutions to a much broader adaptive challenge. I think what we are not doing is instilling in folks the realities that shape our own unique perspectives, right? Those are rooted in our experiences. Each of us are traversing life through a very unique and different set of experiences, a different set of information in different communities with access to different points of view. I think really understanding what shapes our own perspectives, our own points of view, and with that, what shapes the perspectives and points of view of others is an important foundation that will help skills develop out of. But without that appreciation that we are just most often a product of our environment and a product of our experiences, and we need to develop the empathy to understand that others are the product of theirs.
Empathy. There's a word, empathy. So you went through the program. I can't imagine it's the exact same program today as it was then, but it inspired something in you, obviously. And when you were called to give back to the program, you were ready and willing to do that. What do you, I guess, expect from the graduates of this program? What do you expect from them after they go through the training and orientation and hopefully disposition that they're left with through Coro?
Yeah, I think what's really beautiful about the Coro community and the Coro program is that it exists both for the greater good and because of the greater good. And what I mean by that is all of our programs depend on a community of folks who really deeply believe in the transformative power of civic leadership development, of cohort-based community building, of activating leaders with peer learning so that they in turn can transform their communities and organizations. So a lot is poured into the leaders who go through Coro programs. So I think the first is that I hope and I expect that folks who go through our programs just pay it forward, whether that is through Coro programs or beyond, that they actively seek opportunities to invest in other emergent leaders. It is the only way that this work continues. And then I'd say the second is for them to remain committed in whatever capacity is available to them to serving the greater good, right? That is the very core, the very heart of Coro's mission and vision. It is to invest in leaders so that they in turn can invest in a brighter future for Los Angeles, for Southern California, for the US and beyond. And so that is the hope, and that they take the skills, the knowledge, and the community that Coro has instilled and provided them with, really lean into it, really leverage that, and do the great work that they have access to doing to effectuate meaningful change that we so desperately need. That's the hope.
Is it scalable? So I don't know, how many students a year do you encounter? And if it's not through your program, how do we scale some aspects of this so that it can be more ubiquitous in our communities, in our society?
Well, Art, you must be in our strategic planning process because you are in my head. That is exactly what we're thinking about all the time, right? Because the reality is we want to get Coro training to as many leaders as possible. And we're always thinking about sustainable and scalable programming and training. And so that is an active, open question for us. We do that in part with our Coro X portfolio, where we take Coro training to existing teams and organizations, knowing that we're not always going to be able to deliver at scale by building and delivering programs through our own cohort-based leadership development incubators. So we'll take programs to organizations across the region and beyond. And the feedback that we get and the testimonials are incredibly inspiring, with leaders letting us know that some of the tools and the frameworks they've gotten from those workshops have transformed the way that they lead within their teams and their organizations, that they have really built the empathy, the humility to listen in new ways, to learn expansively, and to lead holistically.
I chair the board of an organization called Convergence Policy. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but Convergence is an interesting organization, and it is working in its own way to try to deal with problems of polarization and difference, getting people to communicate across difference and work together to solve policy problems. And our approach is more akin to what you were saying before. We try to get people together who have very different opinions on an issue, who maybe even head organizations. Many of them head different organizations. And what they do is they will then gather together around a table. Table is, just imagery, but the idea is that they communicate for a period of about 18 months. They first get to know each other, and then over time, they start talking about the particular policies that they believe in. And over time, they get to a place where they find common ground. And from that, they then go forward and promote a particular policy together. And it's really odd sometimes when you see the people who are cobbled together actually working together when many times they're actually polar opposites on a particular issue. So we should talk about how we can work together, because I think what we're doing at Convergence is very much in alignment with what you're trying to do to educate individuals to go out and make these kinds of differences on their own.
Absolutely. That sounds incredibly aligned to our work and our mission. And we are incredibly committed to building new partnerships, and collaboration is a foundational pillar of our own philosophy. And so we're always seeking ways to collaborate with other organizations doing work that is aligned with ours. So that sounds great. I look forward to it.
Yeah, that would be fun, I think, to connect some folk going both ways, because I just think that what we're trying to do is build a community of people who are willing to have difficult conversations, who are leading organizations that have their own positions, but are at least open to hearing what their opponents have to say.
Yeah.
And you are already developing those individuals who will go out and lead organizations that have positions, yet knowing that that's not enough. They have to also be willing to hear from the other side. So I think there's an interesting possible alignment in ideology and certainly the same possible vision for our country.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you, because we're heading toward the end of the interview, and I just want to ask you a simple question. On a continuum where one end of the continuum is it's over for the United States. We're never going to get past this. In fact, it's going to get worse. And the other end of the continuum is that we're going to have it fixed in the next 5 years. Where are we on that continuum, in your opinion?
I really like that question. I think we are somewhere right in the middle. I think the fixed end of the continuum, unfortunately, or fortunately, I do not see as a reality, right? We don't live in a destination reality. Everything is grounded in our evolution, the individual and the collective. So we as individuals will continue to evolve. Our communities will continue to evolve. And with that, the nation will continue to evolve, right? And so I do not see the possibility of this being sort of a destination of fixed, but I think the destination of fixed, the closest that we can get to it is a commitment to championing our evolution in a thoughtful, connected, and empathetic way, right? It's really modeling that as citizens of this country, knowing our role globally, being thoughtful stewards globally, understanding that what we do individually impacts the collective, and developing a deep, deep willingness to be responsible, thoughtful stewards, not only of our immediate circumference, but at large. And I think it's going to take work, but we have all of the tools, the resources to engage in that work. It is just going to depend on a collective philosophical shift and a willingness to tap into that. So I hope to leave us on a note of hopefulness. We are not doomed. We are a product of individuals, right? The nation rests on individuals who have both individual and collective will. It's about tapping into that in service of the greater good, in service of the social, economic, and political well-being of our country.
Well, I think that is an excellent note on which to end the interview today. And let me just thank you. To everyone, you've been listening to Natalie Samarjian, who is the president and CEO of Coro, Southern California. And as you heard, she's brilliant, she's informed, and she's hopeful about the future of our country and its ability to deal with polarization, which is, I think, beginning to cripple us both politically, socially, and economically, believe it or not. And so, Natalie, let me just thank you for the work that you're doing. I admire you, and I'm hopeful that all of your dreams for Coro and for our country will come true.
Art, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for this incredibly insightful conversation. And I look forward to opportunities to work with you again.
Well, let's make sure we do. To all of you who are listening for the first time, this is the Heart of Giving podcast. And you can find a new episode every Tuesday, but you need to subscribe to the show. We're on all major podcast platforms. You can go to any one of them and click like, and you'll be subscribed. And every Tuesday, you'll get a new episode when it comes out. If you want to support the podcast, you can do so by going to our website at give.org, give.org, and you can make a donation there. And I promise you, we'll put that money to great use. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you back here next week.
You've just listened to the Heart of Giving podcast with Art Taylor. Be sure to tune in next time for a brand new episode. To listen to our other interviews, visit heartgiving.podbean.com. That's heartgiving.podbean.com. Subscribe to our show on major podcast platforms. The thoughts and opinions expressed on this podcast are the views and opinions of the guests, not those of the BBBY's Giving Alliance or program affiliates. This podcast is for information and educational purposes only and is copyrighted with all rights reserved. This podcast is protected by Podbean's terms of service.